Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon.
You don't have to sit up here, by the way. Oh, okay. If you'd like to. Usually, Test. Tamukhan? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just, you can take her, whatever. Yeah. Leave it.
אוהליך יעקב משכנותיך ישראל מה טובו אוהליך יעקב משכנותיך ישראל ואני ברוב חסדך אבוא ביתך אשתחווה אליך על קודשך ביראתך אשתחווה אליך על קודשך ביראתך
Shabbat Shalom. Oh, we can do a little better than that. Shabbat Shalom. Oh, that was so much better. How grateful and blessed we are to be together on this Shabbat morning for a very, very special opportunity as we will be led in worship and in blessing by Eden, who has really taken upon herself this incredible journey, and how delighted we are to be together. A little bit of words of instruction for those who may be less familiar with a Jewish Shabbat morning service. Our prayer book actually goes in the reverse order as what you would find in an English prayer book or in an English book, so just make sure when you're flipping the pages you go in the opposite direction as you normally would. The numbers of the pages are at the bottom if you end up getting a little lost. Also, as magnificent as we will be led in prayer, we also invite all those to join with us as you feel moved or comfortable. All of the prayers have English that accompany the Hebrew by their side, and there's also transliteration, so you can even, in the English, so you can even follow along and be able to hear some of the Hebrew and even read some of the Hebrew, if you'd like, through the English words that are on the page. Whether myself or Eden will give some instructions, there are certain times in the service when we ask all those to rise or to sit down as appropriate, and those instructions will be given by anyone who's leading the service at those times. What a really wonderful time this is to be together, and it is customary for young Jewish adults as they assume this rite of passage to also be gifted the opportunity for this time and for all times forward to be able to wear a talit, yes. And so you will begin that great gift of our inheritance this morning, provided to you by your parents, as is my pleasure to call forward Baruch and Gisela as they will make their way up to the bima now, as well as joined by Ofra and Dan, and Don, who will in a moment open our ark. Are they here? Is Ofra and Don here by any chance? They're not here yet. Okay, so that's okay. We know how to open the ark ourselves. So why don't you step forward, Eden? And as you, in a moment, will read the bracha over the talit, know that this talit symbolizes many things. It symbolizes on its fringes all of the responsibilities of our tradition. Each thread is considered in our inheritance to be symbolically representing a responsibility or an obligation from Judaism, from the Torah. And so as you take upon the talit, as you wear the talit, you do so in taking upon yourself and immerse yourself in those rights and obligations now as a young Jewish adult, that you live not just for yourself, to be good to yourself, to live by those responsibilities and obligations for yourself, but also to live and to have that be part of you, to be enveloped in it as you make your way in the world. Also, the other aspect that I always like to think of a talit is that it's a nice blanket. It's the Jewish blanket. And just like you have a blanket at home that you snuggle in when you go to bed and makes you feel comfortable and warm and protected and safe, we hope and pray not only this talit, but the Judaism, the family of Solel, myself, Cantor, the Torah, your parents, your Jewish family, the rites and rituals from Passover to Hanukkah to Rosh Hashanah, even, yes, Yom Kippur, that all these will continue to be a sense of protection and safety and support your Jewish blanket in life. And as we are so delighted to have you lead us as you assume the talit, you'll now share with us the prayer as you don it for this time and for all times forward.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehi atef v'tzitzi.
Amen.
Whoever wrapped in a talit is one's youth will never forget. Taking it out of the soft sack, opening the folded talit, spreading it, kissing the border along its length, sometimes embroidered and sometimes embossed. Afterwards, a great sweep over the head, like the heavens, like a huppah, like a parachute. Afterwards, folding it around one's head as if playing hide and seek, and then wrapping the body in it, tight, tight, letting it fold you like a cocoon, and then opening it like wings for flying. And why are there stripes and not black-white squares like a chessboard? Because squares are infinite, without hope, and stripes come from infinity and go on to infinity, like the runways at the airport, so that angels may land and take off. When you wrap yourself in a talit, you cannot forget coming out of a swimming pool or the sea and being wrapped in a great towel and casting it over one's head and wrapping in it, tight, tight, and shivering a little and laughing and blessing. Our service begins on page 80. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who has given the mind the ability to distinguish day from night. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who opens the eyes of the blind. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who frees the captive. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who lifts up the fallen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who stretches the earth over the waters. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who strengthens our steps. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who clothes the naked. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who gives strength to the weary. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who removes sleep from the eyes, slumber from the eyelids. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who made me in the image of God. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me free. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me a Jew. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who girds Israel with strength. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who crowns Israel with splendor. I am a Jew because the faith of Israel demands no abdication of my mind. I am a Jew because the faith of Israel requires all the devotion of my heart. I am a Jew because in every place where suffering weeps, the Jew weeps. I am a Jew because at every time where despair cries out, the Jew hopes. I am a Jew because Israel's promise is the universal promise. I am a Jew because for Israel, the world is not completed. We are completing it. I am a Jew because for Israel, humanity is not created. We are creating it. I am a Jew because Israel places humanity and its unity above the nations and above Israel itself. I am a Jew because above humanity, image of the divine unity, Israel places the unity which is divine. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to engage with words of Torah. Please rise as we continue on page 108. Baruch Adonai Hamivorach.
Baruch Adonai Habarach, Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamivorach, Le'olam Va'ed. Praise Adonai, to whom praise is due forever. Praised be Adonai, whom praise is due, now and forever. Please be seated. We continue on page 110. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvarei hoshech, oseh shalom uvarei et hakol. You are praised, who rolls out the rough, raw clay of the universe into delicate vessels of light, and from nothing at all. We could perceive in a world that has turned old, a shimmering new creation right before our eyes, made this moment, just for us. How much life reveals your presence? How much Torah unfolds from each new flower, from each new wave that breaks upon the sea? You are praised, who forms from the clay that cloaks our lives, the delicate vessels which contain our light. Baruch atah Adonai yotzer hamarot. We continue on page 113. Love your neighbors as yourself, you said, and light blinded we saw. That inner and outer worlds are one, as you are one. You spoke and we wrote. We were reaching for you down the centuries. Your light moving before us. As we climbed, fell back, and climbed again, your Sinai of life. Baruch atah Adonai, haboher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava. We rise for the Shema on the next page. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever. Please be seated. Ve'afta Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha uve'chol nafshecha uve'chol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher Anohi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha ve'shinantam levanecha ve'dibartam bam b'shivtecha beveitecha uve'lechtecha v'derech uve'shokvecha uve'komecha Ukshartam leot al yadeha vehayu letotafot bein eineha uktavtam al mezuzot beiteha uvishareha lema'an tiskeru ve'asitem et kol mitzvotai vehiyitem kedushim Elohehem ani Adonai Elohehem asher hotzeti ethem me'eretz mitzrayim Lehiyot lahem Elohim ani Adonai Elohehem. When justice burns within us like a flaming fire, when love evokes willing sacrifice from us, when to the last full measure of selfless devotion, we demonstrate our belief in the ultimate triumph of truth and rightfulness. Then your goodness enters our lives, and we can begin to change the world. And then you live in our hearts, and we, through rightfulness, behold your presence. We continue on page 122. Who is like you, O God, among the gods that are worshipped? Who is like you? Majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, working wonders. With new song, inspired at the shore of the sea, they redeemed sang your praise. In unison, they all offered thanks. Acknowledging your sovereignty, they said, Adonai will reign forever. Rock of Israel, rise in support of Israel, and redeem Judah and Israel as you promised. Our Redeemer, Adonai Tzivot, is your name. Blessed are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael.
In a moment, you'll be leading us in what we know as the Tefillah, our Amidah, our prayer of our ancestors, that reminds us of our inheritance from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. Also, so too, that tradition was carried on from that time of many generations ago. It's really kind of amazing when you think about the fact that the United States is a pretty old country in a lot of ways, a lot older than you or me or our parents or our grandparents even, right? But it's just a blink of time relative to when Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Rachel, Rebecca, Leah, when they walked the earth, right? That the Jewish tradition is a very old tradition. And there are certain principles that are timeless, like taking care of the sick and being good to your neighbor and making sure that the stranger is accepted and embraced by our society. These are not always easy. And yet, despite it all, despite our holding true to these sacred values, they really make the world a better place. That by doing that, we have endured, and the world has endured. And we've been able to do that through a lot of difficult times and challenges and persevered throughout all of that time, from one to the next, and generation to generation. But not only that, in every generation, at each time and point, we have to ask ourselves, what does it mean for me in my time and place? Because I don't live 3,000 years ago or 500 years ago or even 100 years ago. And it's a particular blessing for me every time I have a Bat Mitzvah to see that we're part of a Reform tradition that holds with equality, men and women, that women can be rabbis, women can be presidents of Reform temples. We believe in lifting up in all ways the equality of women in our world. And so for me, and as I look towards you, I see our future, not just holding and preserving the chain of the past, but uplifting it towards tomorrow so that you can be one of those future Jewish leaders, whether it's in a temple or using those Jewish values in the greater world. And asking for yourself, for you, how are you going to expand that inheritance, not only for you, but for other young women and other women like you, but also expand that horizon of opportunity for all those to be treated equally in our world. And so I ask us all to stand as we move forward, as she will lead us, Eden will lead us in our tefillah.
Adonai, Sefer Tiftaf, Ufi Agitehilateha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise.
On page 125 at the bottom of the page.
Prayer invites God's presence to suffuse our spirits, God's will to prevail in our lives. Prayer may not bring water to parched fields, nor mend a broken bridge, nor rebuild a ruined city. But prayer can water an arid soul, mend a broken heart, rebuild a weakened will. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rahel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Hasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zoher Hasdei, Avot ve'imohot, umevi geula, livnei v'nehem, lema'an shemo be'ahava, melech hoser, umoshia, umogen. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, God of our fathers and mothers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, and God of Jacob, God of Sarah, God of Rebekah, God of Rachel, and God of Leah. Be the great, mighty, and awesome God, transcendent love, God who bestows loving kindness, creates everything out of love, remembers the love of our fathers and mothers, and brings redemption to their children's children for the sake of the divine name. Remember us for life, O Sovereign, who delights in life, and inscribe us in the book of life. For your sake, living God. Sovereign, deliverer, helper, and shield, blessed are you, Adonai, Sarah's helper, Abraham's shield. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor leolam Adonai, mehayeh hakol atah, Rav lehoshia, merid hatal, mehakel hayim vehesed, mehayeh hakol berahamim rabim, somech noflim verofeh holim, umatir asurim, umekayeh emunato lishenei afar, mihamoha ba'agirot, umidomelach, melech memim, umehayeh, umatzmiya Yeshua, vene'eman ata lehayot hakol. You are forever mighty, Adonai. You give life to all. You rain dew upon us. You sustain life through love, giving life to all. Through great compassion, supporting the fallen, healing the sick, freeing the captive, keeping faith with those who sleep in the dust. Who is like you, source of mighty acts? Who resembles you, a sovereign who takes and gives life, causing deliverance to spring up and faithfully giving life to all? Blessed are you, Adonai, who gives life to all. Baruch atah Adonai mehayeh hakol. Let us sanctify your name on earth, as it is sanctified in the heavens above, as it is written by your prophet. Holy, holy, holy is Adonai Tzivot. God's presence fills the whole earth. Source of our strength, Sovereign One, how majestic is your presence in all the earth. Blessed is the presence of God, shining forth from where God dwells. God alone is our God and our Creator, our ruler and our helper. And in mercy, God is revealed in the sight of all the living. I am Adonai, your God. Adonai shall reign forever. Your God, O Zion, from generation to generation. Hallelujah.
In a moment, we will open our ark as we continue in the portion of our Amidah, which we refer to as the Kedusha. As we do so, it's my pleasure to call forward Karen, Natasha, Elvira, and your aunt Norma, who will open our ark on the bima. As we do so, we might ask ourselves, what does it mean to recite the words of the Kedusha? What does it mean to be kadosh? What does it mean to be holy? Because that's what the word kadesh means, to be holy. And in Judaism, what we offer is that same word of holiness means to separate ourselves, to keep ourselves apart and separate. Not necessarily in a way to be afraid, not even a way to be secure, although those sometimes are reasons that we find ourselves separate. But to be holy is to be a people who lives in a way that's different, that chooses in a way perhaps to be different by our own understandings. And our difference in Judaism is to take seriously that we have this incredible inheritance of Torah, and that our connection with Torah and the questions that we ask of Torah guide us through our own understandings for how we should live our lives. So that particular special connection that we feel that we have to our sacred book, to Torah, and to God and to the Jewish people is one way that we make ourselves holy, by taking that seriously. Another way that we keep ourselves separate is we do things intentionally to make time holy by separating time. You can just go through your days in this world, I promise you, and one day will flow right into the next, and 1 week will flow into the next, and 1 month will just flow into the next, and the years will just pass. But then sometimes you'll remember that you have special occasions like this one, or you'll have a special occasion like a birthday, or you'll go to a special place and you'll remember that time, okay? Every week you have an opportunity to set time apart, to take a moment of your week and to be able to renew and to restore yourself, to be with family, to be with Judaism. But you have to make that choice. It's not just going to come for you. And whatever it means to you to separate the time, whether it's an hour for a Shabbat dinner with your family, whether it's time to come to synagogue to sit in prayer, whether it's time to just use the beauty of the world, to make special time for yourself and the people that you love in Judaism on Shabbat, it's not just going to be there. It's not just going to come. You have to choose to separate that. That's what we all do. That's what Jews do. And it doesn't mean that they always even come to the temple, but they do, and we're invited to try to make that attempt to step forward and to try and separate ourselves, to make ourselves more holy and to make the world more holy. And there's a third way, not just with Torah, not just with time, but also with space. We feel that there are special places in this world. I bet you have a couple of them, right? So we also consider that as a community that we make places special in separating ourselves and making them holy. This temple is such a place. Wherever you go, you'll find synagogues and temples, and I hope that you choose to separate yourself from the greater world and choose to find your ways to welcome your way into a temple wherever you are. And wherever you do, it'll be special, that place, in its separateness because it's holy. And also we have a special place not only in our temples, but a special land called the land of Israel, a special people of the land of Israel. And so I hope also in your life, whether you choose to live there or you choose to live here, that at least you'll visit there and spend some time there and hold it in your heart as another special place, because our attachment to that separateness of holiness also exists in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv, in Haifa, and all the lands and all the beauties of all that place in the land of Israel. So as you embark on this prayer of holiness, I hope you take that into your heart of what holiness means to you, how you will use sacred text, sacred time, and sacred space fully so that you can feel more holy and the world can be more holy by how you look at the world and how you choose to invite that world into your holiness of your life. And so it's my pleasure to call you forward as we open our ark.
את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום ככתוב על יד נביאך וקרא זה ואמר קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוא כל הארץ כבודו אדיר אדירי אדוני אדוננו מה אדיר שמך בכל הארץ ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו.
Adonai shall reign forever. Your God, O Zion, from generation to generation. Hallelujah. To all generations we will declare your greatness, and for all eternity proclaim your holiness. Your praise, O God, shall never depart from our lips. Blessed are you, Adonai, the holy God. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
לדור ודור נגיד גודלך לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד גודלך ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש קדושתך נקדיש בשפחך אלוהינו מפינו לא יבוש לעולם לעולם בית לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד גודלך לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד גודלך כי המלך גדול גדול וקדוש 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 אתה לי 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 וקדוש וקדוש אתה.
We continue on page 135. We offer thanks, O God, for this Shabbat, which unites us in faith and hope, for Shabbat holiness, which inspires sacred living, for Shabbat memories, glowing even in darkness, for Shabbat peace, born of friendship and love. We offer thanks and blessing, O God. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadosh HaShabbat. We continue on page 136.
רצה אדוני אלוהינו בעמך ישראל ותפילתם באהבה תקבל ותהי לרצון תמיד עבודת ישראל ישראל עמך ותחזינה עינינו בשובך לציון
We continue on page 138. 138. Modim anachnu lach, sha'ata hu Adonai Eloheinu, velohei avotenu v'imotenu, leolam va'ed, tzur hayenu magen yisenu, ata hu ledor vador. For the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations. Modim anachnu lach. For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons. Modim anachnu lach. For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements. Modim anachnu lach. For human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression. Modim anachnu lach. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared. Modim anachnu lach. For all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom. Modim anachnu lach. For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose. Modim anachnu lach. We pray that we may not live by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Blessed are you, Adonai, your name is goodness, and you are worthy of thanksgiving. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov, simcha ucha na'eh lehodot. We continue on page 140. Sim shalom, tova u'braha. v'rahamim v'rahamim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol Yisrael ameha.
ברכנו יוצרנו כולנו כאחד באור פניך כי באור פניך נתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו שים שלום
שים שלום טובה וברכה וחסד ורחמים ורחמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל ישראל עמך.
בטוב בטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך שים שלום
שים שלום טובה וברכה וחסד ורחמים ורחמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל ישראל עמך. We continue on page 141. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of the world. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Adonai, who blesses your people with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamavarach et amo Yisrael b'shalom.
We now take a few moments of silent prayer and private reflection, guiding language that may be found throughout our prayer books, or whichever prayers may spring from our hearts.
עושה שלום במרומה הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן הוא עושה שלום במרומה הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן יעשה שלום שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל 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 יעשה שלום שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
And so as a congregation, we now turn to page 244 which is our section of our service which we call the Seder Kriyat Torah L'Shabbat, the section of our service where we read from our sacred scripture, from our Torah. And this morning, for the first time ever, you'll be called forward to read from the actual Torah scroll on a Shabbat. How wonderful is that? What is the Torah? I mentioned to you a little while ago, I shared that the Torah is a separate text, then we are separate as a people, and that we share a separate connection to God in holiness through our connection, that special relationship of separateness with the Torah. But what is the Torah really all about? What does it mean? Of course, it means many things. One aspect of Torah that we know in our tradition is that the Torah is a guidepost. Literally, the word Torah means instructions. So just as you have all the various mitzvot that are represented by the various fringes of your talis, of your talit, that is part of what the Torah is. It's a set of instructions of how to live a Jewish life, both in terms of the rituals and the rites, but also the ethics and the moral responsibilities. How do you live? That's part of Torah. Another part of Torah means Torah is also about wisdom. So whereas the Torah, when you think of the Torah, you think of what? The scroll, right? You think of the 5 books of Moses, of Genesis, right? Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, Bereshit through Devarim, right? That we've studied in religious school, that you've studied in preparation of this moment of your Bat Mitzvah, all of that, right? But actually the Torah is much greater than that. There are additional books beyond that, of books of the prophets, books of all sorts of other books that are part of the sacred tradition of Judaism. They're not found in the Torah scroll, but they are considered sacred as well. But the Torah is even greater than that. There's then commentaries about those separate sections of Torah, of all the books. And that's considered Torah. And that's been looked at and commentated on from generation to generation over centuries. But even Torah is greater than that as wisdom. I believe that Torah can be found in philosophy. It can be found in the Torah that you have in the world of anything that you can read. When you find truth and righteousness in this world, that too is Torah. But even more than that, Torah is found in you. Torah is found in me. Torah can be found in any person. When we look into ourselves and say, what is going to be the story of our lives? The Torah is a story of humanity, and it's a story of the Jewish people, beginning with Abraham, going through Moses, going through the monarchs of Judaism, going through the prophets of Judaism, going through the rabbis who lived, all of that to reach this moment for you today. And to continue to ask that question, as you write your life, how is your life going to be authored in the same way that Torah has been authored? What are you going to bring in your life as a young Jewish adult? What are you going to bring in your life that means something of Torah, that means something of saying, what are these instructions? What is this wisdom? How am I going to bring it into my heart? How am I going to live it? I know, I can see already that you've done this soul searching and this growth along this journey of Judaism, of taking that with sincerity. And that's really, to me, the most meaningful part, that you feel, I know, a connection to Torah through the connection of your Jewish family, through your connection of the temple, through your connection of trying to be a good person and trying to search your soul for how to live a Jewish life. And that, as long as that is there, Torah will be with you and will guide you in good ways for the rest of your days. And I hope that this is a beginning of a very, very meaningful blessing in your life. And so this is a tradition that not only are you asking this day, but something that has been asked from your parents and from your ancestors from many generations. And so it's my pleasure to call forward your Abuelita, Catalina, as well as your father, Baruch and Gisela. Where's Baruch? There he is. As we'll embark on our service of Seder Kriyat Torah, and that chain of connection of these questions that we ask and that we take into ourselves of Torah, into our lives, into our hearts, into our souls, continues on from generation to generation through you. As I ask the congregation to please rise on page 245, assemble the people, the men, women, and children, and the strangers in your cities to hear, to learn, to revere Adonai your God, to observe faithfully the words of this Torah, and let their children who do not yet know it hear, that they too may learn to revere Adonai your God. Happy is the one who finds wisdom, the one who gains understanding. For Torah's value is greater than silver, Torah's yield more than fine gold. Torah is more precious than rubies, no earthly treasure can match it.
הנה כמוך ואלוהים אדוני, והנה כמעשיך, מלכותך, מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני מלוך לעולם ועד. Adonai hos le'amo yiten, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom.
For from out of Zion will come the Torah and the word of Adonai from Jerusalem.
Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, udevar Adonai mirushalayim.
In this scroll is the secret of our people's lives from Sinai until now. Its teaching is love and justice, goodness and hope. Freedom is its gift to all who treasure it.
Baruch shenatan Torah Torah, Baruch shenatan Torah Torah, le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Our God is one, Adonai is great, holy is God's name.
והתפארת והנצח וההוד, כי כל בשמיים ובארץ, כי כל בשמיים ובארץ, לך אדוני הממלכה והמתנשא לכל ראש. וטהר ליבנו לעובדך, 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 לעובדך באמת. וטהר ליבנו לעובדך, לעובדך, לעובדך באמת. וטהר ליבנו לעובדך, 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 לעובדך באמת. וטהר ליבנו לעובדך, 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 לעובדך באמת. וטהר ליבנו, וטהר ליבנו, וטהר ליבנו לעובדך באמת. וטהר ליבנו, וטהר ליבנו, וטהר ליבנו לעובדך באמת. לה לה.
For our first reading over Torah, for the first section of Torah, we always offer a blessing, an opening blessing, and a closing blessing for Torah. It's my pleasure to call forward Ofra, Don, and Roni to offer the Aliyah over Torah for this Shabbat morning.
Somebody can read this one.
Ready? ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אדוני מבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן. וידבר אדוני אל משה אחרי מות שני בני אהרון בקרבתם לפני אדוני וימותו. ויאמר אדוני אל משה דבר אל אהרון אחיך ואל יבוא בכל עת אל הקודש מבית לפרוכת אל פני הכפורת אשר על אהרון ולא ימות כי בענן אראה על הכפורת.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו את תורת אמת בחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן. For our second Aliyah, who do we have? Karen and Reuven. Karen Sagman and Reuven Boadana.
ברכו
את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן. בזאת יבוא אהרון אל הקודש בפר בן בקר לחטאת ועיל לעולה כתונת בת קודש ילבש ומכנסי בד יהיו על בשרו ובאבנת בד יחגור ובמצנפת בד יצנוף בגדי קודש שם ורחץ במים את בשרו ולבישם.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת בחיי העולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
And for our third Aliyah, of no relation to Cantor Rosen, Matt Rosen and Natasha Rosen. Okay.
Okay, you have the paper. You can kiss the Torah. Baruch Adonai Baruch Adonai
ברוך אדוני הפורה לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים
ונתן לנו את תורתו, ברוך אתה אדוני, נותן התורה.
אמן. ומאת עדת בני ישראל ייקח 2 שעירי עזים לחטאת ואיל אחד לעולה, ויקריב אהרון את פר החטאת אשר לו, וכיפר בעדו ובעד ביתו, ולקח את 2 השעירים והעמיד אותם לפני אדוני פתח אוהל מועד.
ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו את תורה, וחיי עולם נתן בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני, נותן התורה.
Amen.
Great job.
Yasher Koach. Thank you. Yasher Koach. For our 4th Aliyah, we have the blessing of Baruch and Gisela, the parents of our Bat Mitzvah.
Come closer. Okay, good. Okay.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך,
Baruch Hanayim Brach Ne'olam Va'ed.
אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל הימים, ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן. ונתן אהרון על 2 השעירים גורלות, גורל אחד לאדוני וגורל אחד לעזאזל, והקריב אהרון את השעיר אשר עלה עליו הגורל אדוני, ועשהו חטאת, והשעיר אשר עלה עליו הגורל לעזאזל יעמוד חי לפני אדוני לכפר עליו, לשלח אותו לעזאזל המדבר.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. And as her parents remain by her side, we have now the blessing of the final Aliyah, as Eden will be called forward for the first time for a blessing of the Aliyah, as well as to read from Torah.
תעמוד בחורת הבת מצווה עדן, בת ברוך ונוגה מפטיר חזק.
Baruch Adonai Hamavarach.
Baruch Hanayim Brach Ne'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamavarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai Hamavarach. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, Asher Bahar Banu Mikol Ha'amim, V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
V'lo taki ha'aretz et hem b'tamahem ota, ka'asher ka'a et hagoi, asher lifnehem, ki kol asher ya'aso mikol ha'toevot ha'ele. V'nichretu ha'nefasot ha'aso mikerev amam, ushmartem et mishmarti livyoti, asot mehukot ha'toevot, asher na'asu לפניהם ולא תטמאו בהם, אני אדוני אלוהיהם. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורה אמת, וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Let us rise as we honor the Torah. Zot HaTorah.
לבני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה.
Yehallelu et Shem Adonai, ki nisgav shemo ladavado. Let us praise the name of Adonai, for God's name alone is exalted.
יהללו את שם אדוני, כי נשגב שמו לבדו. עץ חיים היא, למחזיקים בה, ותומכיה מאושר. דרכיה דרכי נועם, וכל נתיבותיה שלום. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה. חדש חדש ימינו, חדש ימינו כקדם.
Please be seated. And now we have an opportunity to hear some words of reflection and meaningfulness of Eden's reflections on our portion of Torah that we just read on the Shabbat. Got it.
My Torah portion is in Leviticus, where it teaches us some of the most important aspects of living a Jewish life, including the ritual of Yom Kippur, which is the holiest day of the year. On Yom Kippur, we fast for many reasons, including to remind ourselves that we are human. Yom Kippur is a holiday that we observe in order to focus on how we can be a better Jew and a better person. The Torah portion states, "You shall keep my laws and my rules, by which to live, for I am the Lord thy God." But then why does it say to live by the commandments? One reason is that life is incredibly valuable and unique in Judaism. I think that Judaism helps me to live a fulfilling life. However, it should have also been stated that Judaism is about living. Why does the Torah emphasize to live for? The rabbi told me a story of a man who was drowning and had to be rescued on Shabbat. Because Shabbat is a time of rest, maybe we would think that we could never break that rest, ever. But I said that it is worth breaking a law of Shabbat for the value of a life in Judaism. And the rabbi said exactly. Being a Jew means we are obligated to break the laws of Shabbat in order to save a life. The laws of Judaism are meant to help us live an easier and more fulfilling life. In my preparation for my Bat Mitzvah, I found out that prayer helps me to live more fully by focusing on positive events and to have more special moments with family. Our mitzvahs in Judaism are all about how to live a good and better life. In addition, I've learned that it's important to know I'm part of a Jewish family having a Bat Mitzvah. Through Judaism, I feel like I am never alone. Judaism also helps me to live a good life by reminding me to always pursue improvement, to find time, like on Yom Kippur, for how I can forgive and ask forgiveness of others. I would like to thank Cantor Rosen and Rabbi Plost and helping me with all of my preparation for my Bat Mitzvah. learning Hebrew, how to read Torah, and lead prayers, as well as about Judaism. I would also like to thank my mom and my dad for always being there for me and always pushing me to do my best. It helped me learn that I should always try and try again. I will always love my Abba and my Ma. Thank you for all being here to support me on this very important day and special day. And a special thanks to my Hebrew teacher, Mary Ann. I have learned a ton from her, so thank you for being able to help me on this journey. Also, I want to thank my tia and abuelita for being able to fly here from Ecuador to be with me on this special day. These last few months have been really hard for my family, especially for the both of them and my mom. I would also like to thank my friends. They have truly helped me through all the good and the bad times. And yeah, so thank you for everything. I love you guys a ton. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Come over here. What a magnificent job you've done. I mean, leading us in prayer, both the Hebrew and the English, and you read them so well. You know, you've come such a long way, and you've really shined, and I'm so, so proud of you. Not only that, but of course your reading of the Torah. And, you know, what I really appreciate is that you persevered through it all. You know, it wasn't always easy, and it wasn't always comfortable. You are, by the way, a magnificent, you have a magnificent voice, and that just comes naturally. And, you know, when you sing, the Hebrew and the prayers just flow right through you. It's really very humbling and uplifting and inspiring to see it and to hear it. And of course, your words of Torah, which you really asked some really good questions as we were studying together and had some meaningful things to say about the Torah. You know, you mentioned Yom Kippur, and I'm trying to think what was meaningful in your life that I could talk about and share with you a little bit of the relevance of Yom Kippur and the words you just shared in terms of their meaningfulness to you. And I know that you are a huge volleyball player. You love, love, love volleyball. And I love seeing that beautiful smile of yours. And I hope you feel that at this moment with all these people and with Judaism as much as you feel it about volleyball. And I can tell you as somebody also who loves a sport, I love swimming, that my swimming and my Judaism compete in their sacredness in my life, okay? So I know you have that same sense in you. Do you happen to know what the word in volleyball in Hebrew is? Kador af, which literally means like a ball that soars, that flies, you know? That's what af is, to fly. And that's, in a way, what we do on Yom Kippur. That's what we do in Judaism. That's what you've done this morning, is you help the list stuff up so that like you look like the birds. In fact, sometimes you can even see the birds here chirping as we're leading services. It's nice. And so I think, you know, in that sense of feeling the ball flying, in a way, you know, I hope that in your life that you have that same sense of uplift and embrace the same way a ball flies over the net. There's another couple aspects I was thinking about that might be meaningful to you. That in volleyball, there's 3 people in the front and 3 people in the back usually, right, in terms of a set order. And which one's more important, the people in the front or the people in the back? They all work together, right? So sometimes in Judaism and sometimes in life, and you're this way, there are times to step forward, and it's to be in the front, and sometimes to be in the back, right? And it's not whether or not one is out in front or one is in back, but they're working together cooperatively. And that's true of Jews as well, that sometimes some of us are in front and some of us are in back, and some of us are different from each other, and we have different backgrounds, we come from different places, and we have different ethnicities, and we have different languages and all that. But no matter what place we are, part of being Jewish is to overcome those differences, just like you have on a team, to being in Jewish. When you come into a sanctuary, I believe, and we believe in Reformed Judaism, that wherever you come from in this world as a Jew, when you're in a sanctuary, you work together as a team. When you're in a congregation, you work together as a team. When you're a Jew, you try and work together as a team, just besides those differences, as one people, right? And that's what we hope that we're doing well. Another thing about volleyball is, how many times do you touch a volleyball before it goes over the net? How many times are you allowed? How many times can you hit the volleyball before it goes over the net? 3 times, right. Now, you might think that that rule was as long as the game is invented, right? But that's not true, actually. You might be learning this, right, for the first time. That actually that rule of touching the volleyball 3 times was actually put in place in the 1930s. Why? Because they would, can you imagine if you didn't have the rule? You could hit it and hit it and hit it again, and when is the game ever going to end, right? So sometimes we make rules in order for things to make more sense, and they become accustomed to who we are. But it takes a challenge to do that. If you were to go to an Orthodox service or conservative service, those services are like hitting a volleyball sometimes 15, 20 times before they go over the net, right? So in Reform, we have things a little shorter to make the game more meaningful, right? There's other things that we do too, like making sure in Reform Judaism, we were the first movement to allow and support women to be able to have a Bat Mitzvah, for instance, right? So sometimes it's not just what you accept, but having that courage of stepping forward to make it something meaningful and purposeful. And that those reforms, that's why we're called Reform, is to make things make sense in a way that are purposeful in our lives, are meaningful in our lives. So we're not constantly just hitting the volleyball over and over and over again, but we can have a meaningful life of Judaism, okay? There's one other last thing that I thought about volleyball. Do you know how many times the average person jumps in the volleyball game? I had to do a lot of research on volleyball this morning. Do you know how many times? Can you guess? How many times? What do you think? 5? More. Way more, right? There's a lot of jumping. Could you believe that it's 300 times? Isn't that a lot of jumping? You probably believe that because you've probably done a lot of jumping in your time in volleyball. But 300 times was a lot more than what I expected. And the reality is that that's also true of life and of Judaism. There's a lot of ups and downs, a lot of jumping around. And life involves jumping around from place to place, from highs to lows, and making sure that Judaism is there with you at the low points, at the high points, and at every stage in your journey in Judaism. So there's actually a lot of connection between how you relate in this game that you love of volleyball and of Judaism. And my hope and prayer, and I know you will, that whatever it is, whether it's volleyball, whether it's tennis, whether it's swimming, whatever the sports are in your life, but also whatever interests and hobbies you have, and whoever you are as a person, that you learn always to find a way of having those two things connect to one another, that they always help you to soar, like the volleyball, to fly, that they always make sure that you are working together across the various divides of humanity to make that purposeful as a Jew, regardless of the backgrounds that we come from, okay? Making sure that wherever you are with volleyball, that you're always, that there are always going to be times where you have to change in order for things to improve and get better, and to make sure that you always